going to be doing my project on a series of unfortunate events. It's a 13-book series for children that I read when I was younger, which is why I decided to do the project on it. Here is a list of the 13 books. I'm not going to go through them because there are 13 of them, but here's a list in case you were interested. The plot. The series of unfortunate events begins with a fire, which burns down the mansion and ends the lives of Mr. and Mrs. Baudelaire, leaving their children orphans. The children are placed under the care of Count Olaf, who is a horribly evil man, simply after their huge inheritance. He is later thought to have originally caused the fire in the first place. With each novel, the children find themselves plagued by Olaf's doings as he repeatedly finds them and makes their lives miserable. During books 2 through 7, Olaf disguises himself and finds his way into the children's lives, committing many crimes in efforts to steal their fortune. In books 8 through 12, the children are disguising themselves instead. They are on the run from the police as Olaf has framed them for his own murder. When the series ends, the children are still uncovering secrets from their parents' lives and murder. The series does not give you a full explanation as to how the children actually end up. Some points I picked up from the Baudelaire orphans under Freud's theory would be 1. Unconsciously, the children miss their parents and life before the accident, and this is very much reflected on their everyday life as they are almost always in a very grim mood. I feel like there is repression among the children. They face much sorrow, but repress as much of it in order to survive all the challenges presented by their nemesis, Count Olaf. Past events. If past events were to determine the outcome of the lives of these children, things would not be looking good, as clearly they've gone through a lot. As for Jung's theory, I noticed compensation. The flow between the conscious and the unconscious is what enables the siblings to actually function. For persona, the children are constantly forced to adapt to a new environment as Olaf destroys what they are placed in. Every book they're in a new setting. There's one book called The Reptile Room. There's another one referencing an elevator, an orphanage, a hospital. They're always changing their setting or on the run. So clearly this is a challenge for them. All of the children do also have an introverted nature, but a different dominant function, I noticed, which I'll discuss more in depth in the next few slides. Violet Baudelaire, who is known as the inventor, is the oldest of the three. Because of this, she takes on a very parental role. I noticed that I see her more as the superego of the three. Since she is the oldest, she naturally takes on the role of the superego. She is forced to act as a parental role in place of her deceased parents. Individuation. Though Charlotte is young, she takes the main role for caregiver for her siblings and finds she has a talent for inventing things. Through this, she is the closest of the children to becoming a fully developed person. And as mentioned before, in the introverted area, I noticed that she has an introverted intuition. Though she doesn't really share her ideas too often, she knows that there are infinite possibilities for inventions and applies this to her everyday life to help save her and her siblings. Klaus Baudelaire is a bookworm. He loves to read, he researches a lot, and he uses his smarts to help them out. I find him to be more of the ego. He's somewhere between Violet and Sunny, who Sunny is the youngest child. He's not only the middle child, but the only boy. So he's a little different in that sense too. To me, he represents the ego as he finds the middle ground and often comes up with a more logical solution through his research. He operates on reality principle. Klaus finds solutions through his books and research. He understands that the real world has constraints. He exhibits introverted thinking. Klaus comes to most of life saving solutions by thinking of everything he has learned. This is the dominant function. His reasoning is almost never dependent on feelings. Though this seems to work for him in the books, to become fully functional as an adult, he will need to learn about emotional intelligence as well. Baudelaire is the baby, and she's known as a biter. She bites everything, basically, throughout the novels. I see her as the id. She's the youngest, and she has much less inhibition than her siblings. And it's very remnant of the id to me, often satisfying her urges by biting things, as previously mentioned. It seems she is in an oral stage of development. She's specifically in the second stage termed oral sadism, which is related to constant biting. She's the youngest of the three siblings and naturally more dependent because of this. It is unknown whether her development will proceed to an optimistic or pessimistic behavior pattern, but due to the circumstances of her young life, my prediction would suggest a more pessimistic pattern. Hopefully that's not the case, but we won't really know because the book is very inconclusive towards the end. I feel that she's introverted in the senses of feeling and sensation. She's young, but insight into the character shows that she does love her siblings, even if she doesn't necessarily show too much affection. And there are certain negative elements which trigger her to bite, which I correlated with sensation. An interesting concept or topic that I was able to relate the children to was intrapsychic conflict. As the children go on running from Olaf and facing struggles before them, they are challenged in deciphering right from wrong. The ids and superegos are in conflict to reach an agreement. In the end, they come to a conclusion that there is simply no good or evil, but a mixture of both, which I think is very relevant to everyday life. No one can be all good or all bad. There is usually some sort of middle ground. Count Olaf is definitely the villain of this. I noticed that throughout the novels there are Freudian slips. Oftentimes, either by accident or on purpose, Olaf makes comments which give away his true purpose rather than go along with his evil plans. This reveals his unconscious wishes even through his disguises, which are very common also. For Anima and Animus, Olaf transitions between many disguises throughout the novels and exhibits both masculinity and femininity, which I was able to associate with Anima and Animus. I do see him as a trickster. He repeatedly and violently disrupts the lives of the orphans. And the shadow, Olaf constantly presents himself as a socially acceptable guardian for the children, while all aspects of his true motives and character are despicable. His true goals are simply to steal the orphans' inherited fortune, and he will go to any lengths, including murder, to get that. Lemony Snicket, the author of the novels, does somewhat make appearances throughout the novels, but they're very discreet. Like the children, he's also falsely accused of crimes, and he's on the run because of this. He was originally in love with the children's mother, Beatrice. However, because of him being framed for the crimes that he's on the run for, he and she were never able to continue their romance, and then Beatrice met the children's actual father. The series of the novels is him embarking on a trail to tell the story of the children in honor of Miss Beatrice after her death. Snicket exhibits intellectualization as he concentrates on following the children and chronicling their lives instead of actually dealing with the feelings that are left or over for their deceased mother. Snicket can be seen as a kind of spiritual father, as he is shown to have much wisdom in the novel, similar to the wise old man concept. And also here are some quotes that show a little bit of his wisdom. Some archetypes in the novel, Beatrice Baudelaire, the Great Mother. Though the children view their mother positively, they later discover many secrets, which also show that she too has negative elements about her. Bertrand Baudelaire, the spiritual father. Though the father was always portrayed as a strong role model, he also showed feminine qualities when tending to the children, such as, he did like to cook, and he participated with the children in that, and some other things. The children are, I think, portrayed as heroes in the novel. Since they're orphans, they need to fend for themselves and be their own heroes. They must constantly overcome Olaf, who is, while still choosing right over wrong. Olaf definitely makes their lives miserable, which is why I referred to him as the trickster previously. And the children need to just do whatever they can to survive, which is very tolling. Well, that is all. Here are some gifts from the children, happy and sad moments. I do believe the novel is very inspiring and shows that, even through sadness, you still need to persevere. Um, that while they're somewhat twisted for children's books, I think that there's a lot to learn from them about optimism and triumph over evil, stuff like that. Well, thank you and have a great day.